The Selkirk Omni is Selkirk's new all-court paddle at $300. It sits in the middle of their lineup. The boomstick is on the power end. The Lux, at least for now, is on the control end. The Omni is in the middle. I've been playing it for 2 weeks, and there's one observation I keep coming back to, and I want to be up front. It's going to sound a little out there. I feel like the Omni changes feel depending on how hard you hit it. Not subtly, noticeably. I went back and forth on this a lot. I played it indoors at around 68 degrees. I played it outside in the high 80s, full sun, hot paddle, and ball. Completely different conditions, different environments. And every single time, that same pattern showed up. Soft shots feel soft, like there's actual give in the face. Drives, overheads, and even some punch volleys feel crisper and firmer through contact. These are my honest thoughts after studying how this paddle actually plays. That's not how most paddles work or feel, and I'm not unconvinced it's all in my head. So let me break all of that down. Full disclosure, Selkirk sent me this paddle to test, no money changed hands, and I had no obligation to make this video or add the paddle to matchpickleball.com, but it's there. These, however, are my honest impressions. It retails for $300, launching June 2nd at Selkirk.com. Use code INF-MPB at checkout for a gift card, which also helps to support this channel. The core on this paddle is what Selkirk calls ReactCore, and it's a 3-layer foam stack. At the center, you have a pure foam floating core. Pure foam is basically marketing speak. It's Selkirk's proprietary EPP foam expanded polypropylene. And the floating part is literal. That center core is not bonded to the ring around it. It sits freely inside. Specific densities are proprietary, so I can't get more specific than that, but the architecture is real. Around that is a pure foam ring, and around all of that on the outside perimeter is an EVA power ring. So that's the double ring system, and that structure is actually the key to understanding how this paddle plays. At lower impact speeds, the softer inner foam layers are what you feel through the face. When you swing harder and there's more energy at contact, the stiffer EVA outer ring engages and the face stiffens slightly. Selkirk describes it as adaptive flexibility. That's not just marketing, it actually does play out. The face is a multi-layer T700 carbon fiber system. The whole thing is Gen 4 unibody molded construction, and it's USAP approved. Surface texture is Infinigrit. The pitch here is durability, not maximum grit. Selkirk claims 3 times the longevity of standard raw carbon, but in my experience, I can't personally endorse that claim. I know Selkirk has done the testing and wouldn't put a number like that out there if they didn't stand behind it though. I've just seen different results. They're also intentionally staying within the USAP grit limits rather than pushing into UPA only hyper-textured territory. A lot of recent UPA only paddles have gone the high grit route, and those are legal for pro play, but not at the standard amateur tournaments and local leagues sanctioned by USAP. So the Omni plays it straight, and you can use this pretty much anywhere. The paddle also carries over the MOI weights from the boomstick, but unlike the boomstick, these are adjustable. I'll cover them later because I think they're worth demonstrating. Let's talk numbers. And I'm putting the full breakdown of the Omni on the screen now so you can pause, but let me walk you through the main points. The dimensions of the elongated shape are 16.5 by 7.5 inches. My test unit weighs 8.27 ounces, which is on the heavier side. Swing weight measured 122.3, which is above average and noticeably heavy through contact. So what does that mean? It means the paddle tends to swing heavier in the standard weight configuration, but that's where the adjustable MOI weights get interesting, and we'll cover that in a minute. The stock twist weight is 6.9, right in the average stability range, but that also translates to very good stability for an elongated shape. The bounce point is 24.8 centimeters, which puts this on the head-heavier side. That combination of high swing weight and head-heavy bounce gives the paddle a substantial feel through the hitting zone. Now, here's where it gets interesting. These weights on the side are adjustable, and moving them changes how the paddle performs and feels to swing. Also tested with an overgrip, which brings the static weight to 8.37 ounces, swing weight to 122.35, and twist weight to 7.0. Excellent stability, and you feel that heavier swing weight. With the weights pulled out entirely, the paddle weight drops to 7.84 ounces, swing weight goes to 114.6, and twist weight drops to 5.55. That configuration is just not playable for me, but it might work for you. Move them to just under the lower corners and the swing weight drops to 116.85, twist weight and stability drop with it to 6.05. Move them to just above the lower corners and swing weight climbs to 119.7, twist weight jumps back up to 7.0. Move them to just under the upper corners and swing weight goes up to 126.95, twist weight goes to 6.95. My sweet spot is just above the lower corners, and that's where I put weight 90% of the time anyway. It drops the swing weight by about 3 points and keeps the twist weight right at stock. One note from my testing, the edge guard came loose on one side. I hope this doesn't become a bigger issue because I think the system genuinely works. A separating edge guard, however, is not a small thing, especially for a $300 paddle. But Selkirk's warranty should cover it, and it's worth keeping an eye on. Last thing on the weight system, it's a cleaner process than using weighted tape, which is expensive and a pain to remove because of the glue residue. You buy the Omni once and move the weights wherever you want them. If you want something similar without buying the Omni, look into the slice sliders. A bit more work to install, but not permanent, and you can reposition them. The handle on the Elongated is 6 inches with a 4.125-inch circumference, and this is one of the better handles on the market today. Surface roughness comes in on the smoother side, which lines up with the Infinigrit approach, staying within the USAP grit limits rather than maxing out texture. Basically, if you want the absolute grittiest paddles on the market today, look for the UPA only stamp and one of those enhanced grit surfaces. Currently, USAP has different types of paddle construction and performance requirements. On performance metrics, they're on the screen now. Serve speed comes in above average. Punch volley speed is above average as well, right at the borderline. Spin lands above average, again, just over that line. And Z-scores drive those ratings. A Z-score of 0 is the market average across every paddle I've tested. The 0.5 mark is where I draw the line between the average and above average in my system. All three of the Omni's performance numbers land right in that threshold. Not pushing into the elevated territory, just consistently above average across the board. That's the number profile of a paddle that does everything well without standing out in any one category. What's notable is that all three cluster together just above the midpoint. Nothing is elevated, nothing is low. That's genuinely an all-court number profile. You're getting a little of everything and not a lot of any one thing. The first thing I noticed when I started playing this was the feel on touch shots. Working the kitchen, dinking, doing reset work. The ball came off the face noticeably soft. Not dead, not slow. Resetting the ball is just easier compared to poppier paddles. So at that point, I'm thinking this is a soft, controlled paddle. And then I started opening up and driving the ball, and the feedback changed. The face felt noticeably crisper through contact, stiffer, almost like a different paddle, and I realized that sounds strange, but I'm going out on a limb to describe my impression. I started paying attention to that feel relative to the type of shot deliberately after that, going back and forth between dinking, dropping, and driving, and yeah, the feel shifts depending on what you're doing. Soft contact, the paddle gives. Full swing, it responds differently. Most foam paddles have a consistent feel across shot types. The RPM Q2 and CR series from Honolulu Pickleball have this springier character that's there whether you're dinking or ripping a drive. The Omni doesn't work that way. The feel seems to adapt to the swing, which again, I know sounds strange, but once you look at how the core is actually built, I think it makes sense. The softer foam layers in the center are what you feel on lighter contact. The EVA power ring on the outside engages on heavier swings. I actually went back to Selkirk and asked directly. Pure Foam is that proprietary EPP foam expanded polypropylene, and the floating center is structurally real, not bonded to the surrounding ring, just sitting freely inside. The specific densities stay in-house. I get it. Keep the Xerox machines out of the game for as long as possible. So I actually sat down with a few paddles right after a session and recorded a quick, rough comparison. The RPM Q2 Elongated, the Boomstick Elongated, and the Honolulu Pickleball J2 CR. I'm going to cut to that right now, and then I'll come back with the full breakdown. All right, so I've been out here drilling for a while with the Selkirk Boomstick, Selkirk Omni, Honolulu Pickleball J2 CR, and the RPM Q2 16mm Elongated. I think there are some similarities here worth talking about, and hopefully that helps you make a better buying decision if you're looking at any of these four paddles. This is the Omni. This is the Boomstick. Just bouncing a ball off them. The sound profile is kind of indistinguishable. Here is the RPM Q2 and Omni. Also a bit indistinguishable, right? At least in person. Who knows what it's going to sound like on a mic, but we'll find out. All right, let me grab the J2CR. Okay, so the J2CR has a higher pitch. It also has a denser feel to it. Stiffer, denser feel to it. Slightly. Not an extreme difference. So of these four, the Omni is definitely the softer, plusher model of these four on touch shots. Then I would go with the J2CR, getting slightly firmer, slightly. This is like fractions, guys. And then The boomstick and the Q2 are closest for me in this little play test here. These are not dramatic differences. They're very, very, very subtle. Okay, so what's interesting about the Omni, unlike these other three, is that the Omni, this is really awkward to describe because I don't know if this is in my head, but I've talked to a couple other people and it might not be just in my head. But on soft shots and touch shots, the Omni plays softer. The ball feels softer off the face. But when you take a full ground stroke or an overhead to put a ball away, I swear the paddle surface feels stiffer and crisper. And that's, again, tripping me out. It's playing with my head. But I'm going with it because genuinely, that's how it feels to me. J2CR, I don't get that. RPM Q2, I don't get that. Boomstick, OG, I don't get that. I feel the same-ish from touch shot to power-driven shots on those three paddle lines, but on the Omni, I don't. Now, maybe it has to do with, it's 90 degrees outside and the foam and the polymers are softened up a little bit, but, I play in a climate-controlled environment, mostly 65 to 70 degrees, and I picked it up there. So, I don't know. The Omni is pretty interesting. If you guys have one, if you get one, definitely let me know what you think. Okay, so you heard me walk through those three side by side. The main thing to take away from that is that the differences between all these paddles are real but subtle. We're talking fractions. The Omni lands in a specific spot within that group, and it's worth understanding what that spot actually means in terms of feel. The sound and feel are both a bit hollower than the boomstick, softer overall. The boomstick is a sharper, more aggressive paddle. The Omni is more controlled and more damped through contact. Here's the interesting data story on that though. The Omni swing weight is actually higher than the boomstick Elongated's. There's more mass in this paddle through contact, but the feel in your hands is more controlled because the foam construction channels that mass into a damped response rather than raw pop. You're swinging something substantial, but the ball doesn't come off as aggressively as the weight would suggest. Now let me get specific about what that actually looks like shot by shot. On drops and resets, the ball sits where you put it. The face gives on contact, which means you're not fighting the paddle to keep the ball low. Drops land in the kitchen and stay there. Resets don't pop back hot. Now, obviously, that's all with good, deliberate technique. It's not a magical paddle, but do I think there's a good chance you will play better with the Omni? I actually do. Thinking there's enough surface grip to shape the ball and the spin numbers support that. You can roll dinks and get actual angle and action on them. Nothing about the touch game on this paddle is going to frustrate you. On drives, serve speed comes in above average and you feel that. Paddle has enough weight behind it that full swings travel, but again, it's not amplifying what you give it. If you swing at 80%, it returns roughly 80%. Punch volleys are where the output is more restrained. Pop comes in above average, but just barely. This is not a paddle where the transition game feels aggressive. It's controlled and measured. If you want a punch volley that jumps off the face, this is not the paddle for that. If you want reliable, placeable output at the kitchen line, I do think the Omni delivers. On the performance side, this isn't a paddle that's going to get you in trouble. Again, relatively speaking, it's not a unicorn paddle. Coming from something with a more aggressive, springy, poppy feel, you're trading some of that immediacy for more predictable output across the board. Here's the cleanest way to describe what this paddle fundamentally is. Stock, it's a head-heavy, above-average swing weight all-court paddle that plays more controlled than the physical numbers would typically suggest. Paddles in this weight, construction, and swing weight range usually lean power. The Omni doesn't. The triple-layer foam core absorbs energy at contact rather than transmitting all of it into the ball. The soft to crisp shift is the clearest expression of that engineering. On touch work, the paddle gives. On drives and overheads, it responds with the weight behind it. You're not getting one consistent feel from this paddle across all shot types. You're getting a feel that feels like it adjusts to what you're actually doing. And again, that feeling is messing with my head. If you buy the Omni, I do want you to tell me your thoughts about how you feel it plays. For some players, that's exactly what they want. For players who calibrate their game around a consistent, predictable feel on every shot, that shift might feel off, but it's worth knowing about before you pick it up. The adjustable MOI weights are worth a demonstration because they're a real feature. They ship installed in the bounce stock position, which gives you the performance profile I just described. Each weight is 7.5 grams. If you want more control, you shift both weights toward the handle end. The bounce point moves, swing it comes down slightly. If you want more power and a heavier feel through the swing, move them towards the head of the paddle. To remove them, apply light pressure to the inner edge and pry them off just one at a time. Line them up in the new position and just press firmly. You'll hear a click when they're locked. They're also symmetrical, so you can't mix them up. If you bought paddles in the past and then added weight onto the sides to tune the feel, this is a structured version of that process built into the paddle. 15 grams total of movable weight is not nothing. It's a real range of customization. That's genuinely useful, especially on the wide body shape where the wider face makes the power configuration more forgiving on off-center contact. I've played both shapes, though most of my time has been on the elongated, and that's what this review is primarily based on. I got that one first. The elongated is 16.5 by 7.5 inches with a 6-inch handle. That's a standard elongated profile with a longer reach and extended swing arc. The wide body is shorter at 16 by 8 inches with a 5.6-inch handle. The twist weight on the wide body is higher, which means more torsional stability. Off-center hits stay more forgiving, just like they do on the boomstick. That combination of higher stability and a shorter, wider face makes the wide body the more accessible of the two shapes. If you're newer to the Selkirk foam line and want the most stable version of the paddle, the wide body is the direction to go. Same core construction on both, same price. The Omni sits where Selkirk positions it between the boomstick and the Lux, at least right now. More controlled than the boomstick and way less specialized than the Lux. Those two paddles are not close to each other in feel or purpose. The Lux is a dedicated control paddle. That's its whole thing. The Omni has pop, it has spin, it has a power option when you need it. They serve different players. In terms of performance numbers, the Omni is in similar territory to the 6-0 Coral. Both are all-court paddles that cluster just above average across serve speed, pop, and spin without dominating in any one category. The boomstick costs a little more at $333 and delivers a sharper, more aggressive feel. If you want maximum output from the Selkirk foam line, the boomstick is still the call. The Omni is the version of that DNA recalibrated toward consistency. So I think this paddle makes the most sense for an intermediate to advanced player who has a developed touch game and wants a versatile tool. If you've been on a pure power paddle and you're losing points on resets and drops, this is exactly the transition Selkirk designed this for. The adaptive feel pays off most when you're deliberately using different swing speeds for different shots. Soft hands for touch work, full swing for drives. That's a more advanced player behavior. The paddle is tuned to respond to that difference. Now, here's something I also want to address honestly because it came up for me. I've thought about whether this is a better paddle for a developing player compared to the boomstick wide body, and the honest answer is probably not, but if I'm also honest, my thoughts are mixed. My wife is a 3-0 player, plays the boomstick wide body, and plays very well with it. Much better than she did with her 14mm Perseus. What she gets from it is stability, power return on contact, and more balls making it back over the net and low with less effort. The high torsional stability on that paddle combined with the power assist and the wider face is genuinely useful for a player who's still building consistency. The boomstick in some ways does more of that work for you. The Omni is more demanding of what you bring to it. It returns what you put in rather than amplifying it. For a player at 3-0, that might be less useful than a paddle that compensates for an imperfect swing. Again though, my thoughts are developing here. And now I want to editorialize just for a second. I think the era of the all-out power paddle peaked. At least I hope so. And I think that's actually a good thing. Because paddles like the Omni, the 6-0 Coral, the Yola Pro 5, the Luz Glider, and others in this all-court space are where most players actually belong, in my opinion. Not because they're soft or easy, but because they let you actually play pickleball. Drives, resets, thirds, fifths, speed-ups, dinks. You can do all of it without the paddle working against you when you're not in perfect position. I think more players would have more fun on a paddle in this category than on something that's essentially built to be a cannon. And I say that as someone who's played a ton of power paddles. The market has been slowly figuring this out, and I think the Omni is a solid example of that direction. If you're in the intermediate to advanced range and you want a Selkirk paddle that covers the whole court without a bias toward one end of the spectrum, I think the Omni is a serious option, and it's one I would recommend. So that's it. That's the Selkirk Omni review. It's a $300 all-court paddle with a genuinely interesting construction story and a real engineering explanation for the way it plays. The adaptive feel is what makes it different from a standard all-court foam paddle. It's not the most powerful Selkirk paddle. It's not the most control-biased one. It's the versatile option in the lineup, and I think it delivers that. I think Omni is worth a serious look. If you want the paddle to generate pace for you, the boomstick is still the better fit. Pick it up on June 2nd at selkirk.com and use code INF-MPB to get a gift card at checkout. That also helps support the channel. Drop a comment below if you've played a paddle with a similar adaptive feel on contact, or if you think I'm crazy. I can take it. I'm curious whether other multi-foam cores are doing something similar in the market right now. And if you found this helpful, hit that like button and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.